We saw a few breakthroughs in the past 3 or 4 months and started getting more inbound leads coming into the site. And it was a game changer. And that's when I realized, like, hey, our issue is not sales. Our issue is marketing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of My Biggest Marketing Mistake, the podcast where we transform costly failures into priceless insights. I'm your host, Kacy Maxwell, and the story that we're going to tell you today is one that I think most founders or entrepreneurs or small businesses are going to really get a lot out of, because it's a mistake that honestly often happens with the best intentions in mind. And that mistake is not focusing on marketing soon enough. More on that in a minute. So this is episode 8 of season 1 of this show, and we are looking for more great guests to come on here and tell their story. So if you're a CEO or a founder and you have a marketing mistake and some lessons that you've learned from them that you'd like to share with our audience, we want to hear from you. Check the link in the show notes on how to apply. Today's quote on failure comes from Stephen Bartlett, host of the top-rated Diary of a CEO podcast. When asked about the growth and success of his company, he said, 2 of the most used phrases in our company that are still in use today are the phrase 1%, which is an obsession with the tiniest details, and the second is the word failure, which means our job is to increase the rate of failure. If you do these 2 things, and if you have so much passion and fuel in the engine, all you need is patience. Failing fast, understanding what went wrong, and then having the patience and endurance to keep trying is the key to success in business and in marketing. Now, when is the right time to focus on marketing? This is a question that plagues all founders, startups, early business owners, because honestly, at the beginning, marketing can feel like a luxury. Right? You're just trying to keep the lights on. So you need to focus on the things that are generating revenue today. And in your mind, early on, that's sales and delivery. And this will work for a while. But it's usually not until all of a sudden the things that you've used to scale your business stop working that you turn to marketing. And at that point, there's a pretty big hole that you're going to have to dig out of. And that's what our story is about today. Our story today comes from Kyle Bush, co-founder of Cumberland Creative, a video storytelling agency here in Nashville, Tennessee. Kyle and his team build powerful brand stories for companies using video. But early on, Kyle and his team focused primarily on sales and kind of put marketing as a nice to have later on down the road. And that worked for a while, until Kyle realized that their ability to drive the business where they needed to go on relationship selling and referrals alone wasn't going to work. He realized there is a crucial difference between sales and marketing, and that only focusing on sales left a big gap in his organization. In our conversation today, Kyle and I unpack why failing to invest in marketing early has negatively impacted their growth, and the importance between understanding the difference of sales and lead generation and the perils of handling marketing by committee. All that and more coming up right after this.
You want to grow, and you need a marketing partner to help accelerate the process. At Provisions Group, we take a comprehensive approach to marketing and technology to maximize impact and growth. We work alongside you to build and implement a customized marketing plan, and we help you optimize your tech stack so you can operate efficiently and securely. Plus, our tenured fractional advisors are here to partner with you to keep your objectives aligned and create a roadmap to success.
Hey, Kyle, I'm really glad that you're on the podcast today. I'm excited to really dig into your story and some of the lessons that you've learned around marketing. But I kind of start every podcast conversation with the same question. And so it takes kind of the right type of person to want to come on a podcast and talk about a time that they failed. And so I wanted to ask you just kind of your relationship with failure. Like, why are you comfortable talking about failure on a podcast?
Yeah, well, I'm the perfect guest for this podcast because I have plenty of failures, a bunch of them. Yeah, no, I've grown comfortable with it. I think that anybody who's been an entrepreneur who is an entrepreneur, if you're not comfortable with failure, you're not going to make it. Because it's just a reality. It's a really hard, complex thing to do. And the only way to learn is by trying your best and failing. If you start a business or if you want to be an entrepreneur and you can't handle rejection, you can't handle failure, there's no world where you'll make it, right? So yeah, I don't know. I've always been pretty comfortable with it for the most part. I'm not sure why. Um, yeah, I guess I could go into some deep childhood stuff, or I could think about like sports or upbringing, but it's honestly always been something where I'm okay with it and I'm okay with failing. And I think as I've grown and matured, that's increased for sure. But these days, yeah, I really look at failure as some of the best lessons, right? Like I'm as cheesy as it is, I really believe in that saying, like, you win or you learn. The only way to fail really is to quit. And I know I'm not going to quit. So I think that's why I'm comfortable with it.
That's awesome, man. One of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is because I think you learn so much from failure. And when people talk about failure, talk about the decisions they made that caused a mistake, a failure, whatever to happen, it's going to help others that are in the same situation. And what we're going to be talking about today, the thing that you've worked through over these past few years at Cumberland Creative, I think is something that a lot of entrepreneurs, startups, et cetera, are working through. So let's talk a little bit about that. So set the scene. What was kind of your vision for Cumberland when you started it? What do you do?
Yeah. So it was a dark, rainy night on the interstate down to Atlanta. And me and my business partner now, friend and coworker and roommate at the time, we're on our way to a shoot. And we're on our way to shoot with a guy named Matt Frazier, a big CrossFit guy, right? And there's three of us in the car. We were working for a small boutique video storytelling firm, and we absolutely loved the work. We loved what we do. We still love it. But we were just feeling a lot of real pain points with the way that small little company was being run. And we just kind of saw the writing on the wall, unfortunately, for what we thought would play out. And we decided, like, hey, we can either go down with the ship or we can try to jump off onto a little lifeboat of our own and see if see if we can make it work. So that's ultimately what we decided to do. So it was on that car ride where we kind of had that realization, that heart to heart of let's jump off. And it was perfect for us at the time because we were 22, 23, 21, something like that. And we were living in an apartment with like 5 dudes in a 3-bedroom, and our rent was like $300. And I was finishing up college. My other roommate, my business partner, didn't go to college. So he was just kind of working and grinding it out. So it's like we had nothing to lose, really. Anything was up for us. So that's how we started. And the mission, the vision, and the core reason behind starting is in the video industry. I like to say sometimes that it's kind of like the DMV mindset. And what I mean by that is, when you go to the DMV and they can't wait to tell you why they can't help you or how you don't have the right paperwork or just a reason why it's not going to work out for you, even though you took the time to come there and they want to send you away. The video world can be a lot like that, unfortunately. It can be very much like, oh, rescheduling fee. That's not in scope. We can't do this. We can't do that. It can be a very like us versus them mentality. And me and my business partner hated that. And so that was really the core vision. Like, we're going to start this thing and we're going to do what we love to do. And most importantly, we're going to really try to make it a fun, enjoyable, supportive experience for our clients. Because ultimately, the way we saw it is they're the ones paying us money for us to get to do what we love. So why would we not like be super chill and super cool and friendly to them and try to serve them instead of acting like they're there to serve us?
That's so good. The thing that I love is there's this passion that you had. You really love doing what you're doing, and I've watched a lot of the content that's come out of Cumberland, and you can tell, like you can just tell you guys are having fun and really really enjoying it. So you guys jump off, you get in your lifeboat, you're starting this thing. Everybody's journey at a company with marketing is different, right? And everybody thinks about marketing a little differently. So, when did you really start thinking, "Man, I need to start making some marketing decisions"?
I think, and we can talk about this, but I think my biggest failure with marketing is I didn't think about it for a long time. I thought about sales. And I think that up until very recently is something that I'm digging into. And so honestly, I mean, we did a little bit of social media for ourselves. We were thinking about marketing all the time for our clients, right? And when you're small and when you're just starting, you really don't need marketing. That's going to be controversial, but at least in the way that we scaled and the way that a lot of video companies scale, it's like at first you're just trying to you have nothing to market with. And so it's like you just got to get some work, you got to do some sales, and you have to just get out there and shake hands and find an opportunity so that you can get work and you can start building a brand and building a portfolio that you can market with. But the bad thing for me was I enjoyed sales and I felt like I was good at it. And so it became a crutch. And so for a long time, other than like a few social media posts and making a new reel each year and then throwing up some random PPC ads, I didn't think about marketing at all. And it's not until really like this year, really until the past several months, that I finally had the light bulb moment that lead generation and the sales process are best served when you think about them as two different things. Up until maybe 3-4 months ago, my thought process was never I need to scale marketing, I need to scale sales. I need better salespeople, I need better prospecting, I need more salespeople to do more prospecting. And yeah, just not having that delineation between sales and marketing and just thinking that the way I've always done it is you go out and you find your own deals. And then, finally, we started getting a little bit better at marketing. We saw a few breakthroughs in the past 3 or 4 months and started getting more inbound leads coming into the site. And it was a game changer. And that's when I realized hey, our issue is not sales. Our issue is marketing. It's lead generation, because once we have a lead, we're really great at closing those leads and doing really meaningful work together and building that relationship over time into a really substantial partnership. It's really just finding the opportunities. And so that's for sure, kind of jumping straight to the chase. That's my biggest marketing fail. It's just really, even as somebody who works high level in marketing, doing multi-6-figure marketing projects for people, it just, for whatever reason, in my own marketing, never occurred to me that sales and lead generation, marketing are two different things.
There's a lot in there, and we can talk a lot about some different aspects of that. But I kind of want to even go all the way back to the beginning of what you were talking about. We didn't really have a lot of marketing. So when you start a company, there are some key things that marketers consider marketing that often people outside the marketing realm don't consider marketing. So coming up with your name, right? The name of your company, the logo, creating a website, even creating social media accounts. Like a lot of that is very foundational to marketing. So how are you making those decisions early on? It sounded like you didn't have a formal marketing department. So were you farming that out to different areas? Were you the one kind of taking that vision and getting that out there? How are you handling that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great point. The branding stuff definitely is a function of marketing, and that's definitely something we by necessity have to do. So we had 5 days to come up with a name, and that was one of the most painful, agonizing things. And honestly, I suck at naming things. Like I enjoy the process, but I feel like I suck at it because it took way too long. And the reality of naming things today too is we came up with a lot of really cool names, but they were taken. And that's something you don't think about when you're starting a company is oh, I can think of a cool name. It's yeah, but so can everybody else. And most likely the Instagram handle's taken, the website URL's taken. And so you can't really use it. And we were in the throes of trying to name. And I believe we had this Native American old map, hanging on a wall in our apartment. And then it had our region and it said Cumberland region. And I said, Cumberland Creative. I was that sounds good. I checked the Instagram handle. It was there. Awesome. And then our first logo was a black bear. I don't know why it was a black bear, but that's what we picked. And then we took our brand a little bit more seriously, probably about 3 years in, where we just felt like the black bear didn't really make sense. We didn't really like it, didn't really embody who we were. And so we actually worked with an amazing branding firm out of Nashville called Cumberland Creative. And that's where we got our new logo, which is supposed to be a maker's mark because, he was you guys are very you're craftsmen. That's the thing that keeps coming to me, real craftsmen. And so he's craftsmen used to put a maker's mark on stuff. And it's a nice stamp you could seal on there. And at that time and still, we were doing a lot in the outdoor world. And he's it also kind of looks like the top of a bullet. And so there's all these different things, but we like the simplicity of it. And we kind of rebranded from there. So that's probably the most we thought about our marketing was naming and then the rebrand up until recently.
Yeah, it's when you are running and gunning in the early days and you are just trying to get clients, you're just trying to make payroll, you're just trying to keep the lights on. There are things that seem less important that potentially down the road have consequences. So we work with a lot of companies that need to rebrand. And it's kind of the same reason. They just picked a lane, made a name, had an agency build it or whatever and put it up, and then they've been going, and then they realized who they are, right? They realized this is my essence, and then they're like, that logo, that doesn't match me anymore. And I don't think there's not necessarily a way around that at times, right? I mean, you're trying to, like, you had an idea of what you wanted to do, but what Cumberland today is probably different than when you guys first started. What you're doing, what that ethos is, well, the heart is probably still there, but there's a change. So, but I love that whenever you started getting into it, you're like, we actually need to really think about that because that doesn't relate to who we are. And I think a lot of people, like those key things, your name, your logo, and even your website, I think some people minimize how important that is to customers as they go. And so they wait way too long for a rebrand, or they wait way too long. Like we see people all the time that they're like, my site is it's about 18 years old and we haven't touched it and it barely loads. And I'm like, you guys realize every time somebody hits that site, they are forming a perception of your company by that site. And so, like, but you can't see that, right? Because they're just numbers in a Google dashboard. And you're like, oh, it's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that really does highlight, like, you guys did a good job of really thinking through, man, this doesn't really embody who we are. So as you kept going, how were you growing pipe? Was it was just sales team? Was it partners going out? How were you sending video testimonials? Like what were some of the marketing functions that you were actually using?
Yeah, great question. I think partnerships are great in the agency world, and I think that they're essential to some regard because otherwise you get stuck on a hamster wheel. Like you need to have somebody in an ideal situation that's one person who's focused on growing, who's focused on business development, relationship sales, and one person who's focused on delivery. So that this way you can continue full-time selling and going out and trying to, make new relationships. And the other person can focus full-time on delivering the product, right? And we were very fortunate in that. Like I concepted, did the creative ideation, and did the business development. My partner directed, shot, and edited. And so he was able to, like, we bring in a new project, and while he was making it, I was still out there doing the same thing. And I think that's essential. So yeah, in the beginning, it was, our MO from day one was we're going to stay busy. Even if we're doing work for free, we're going to stay busy. And so that's what we did. Every networking event you can imagine, shooting whatever we could shoot, shooting stuff for free, doing anything we could to get our foot in the door. We landed a few great clients early on. And then our first big break actually was when we shot with a local chimney company called Ashbusters. As soon as those videos hit, I mean, I was getting like legit like call after call after call from all kinds of people in the chimney industry. And so that formed a package that we still sell today. That's called the Pillar package, where it's basically creating a video for each page of your website with the most important pillar piece being like the who we are, founder story, about us piece. And so that's when we got our first big break, and we wound up going on to create packages and work for dozens of chimney companies all over the country. And that really gave us some stability, got our legs under us. It was a mixture of that and then landing a client named Killcliff at the time that was a energy drink, recovery drink started by a former Navy SEAL that was really big in the CrossFit space. So they needed a lot of content. And that's how we kind of like got our footing under us and started being able to scale, was that niche and then that sort of one big client.
So a lot of, I would say, service-based industries operate in that model, right? You go in, you find a client, and then you kind of land and expand, or What we call it around here is we call it spearfishing, right? So we've got people that are going out and they've got one spear and they are hunting, and so they're going to the events that you're talking about, networking, trying to meet as many people. And again, that's only scalable to a point, right? The only option is to hire people with more spears, right? Because there's only so many hours in a day and so many networking events, et cetera. At some point, you have to say there's got to be a different way that we're going to scale, right? And we say, we call it nets, fishing with nets versus fishing with spears, right? You need to cast nets to capture more. You're seeing growth. This is moving forward. Your company is growing. At what point was there something that happened that you're like, this isn't going to scale out? Like this is either too slow, or I don't want to hire this many people. What was the thing that happened that made you go, I gotta look to marketing to do something more for my business?
Yeah, I love that analogy of spearfishing and net fishing. Yeah, for us, I'd say it was about end of 2022. End of 2022, our revenue goal was 1.4 million, and we wound up doing 2.4. And so we exceeded what we planned on doing by $1 million, which is great and sounds great. And it was great, but it was super stressful. And it about broke us because we were just grinding. And one of our core values is grit. And we really believe in that, but we also believe grit, not grind. Like grinding is not good. And we were grinding. And so that's when we were kind of in this real chicken or the egg situation where it was like, okay, well, we did this much work and we have reason to believe that we'll have this much work, but this was way too much for the team that we have. So we need to put a leadership team in place. Like if we're going to scale this thing, we need a COO, we need a leadership team, we need to get on an operating system. And that's when I read Traction. And so we decided to go down that route. And we wound up hiring a few more people. We wound up hiring a COO and expanding headcount pretty quickly. But then as we got better, we started getting bigger projects and bigger project needs coming up pretty consistently. And so that's when we decided for the first time to deviate away from that model and to hire, assuming that we would continue to get these big project needs, which we have. The stress switched from how are we going to deliver on all of this to how are we going to make sure that we have enough work to hit our margins, first and foremost, and of course, not only hit our margins, but not lose money or God forbid have to lay people off, right? So that's when the first time we started thinking about like lead generation and true marketing of like marketing driving sales and like how do we get more leads? How do we find more business? And that's the point where we really hit the inflection of like we really need marketing, because before that we always had more work than we could handle. And it was like trying to figure out how we were going to handle all of it, which is great. So yeah, it's been the past, I'd say, year and a half. It's the first time where we really started facing that marketing issue. But even within that, my initial thinking, for whatever reason, was just like, we need to scale the sales team. It wasn't, we need to focus on marketing. It's like, we need to scale the sales team for like the first year. And then I started thinking about marketing, but we'd never had an official marketing person, like a full-time marketing person on our own team until a few months ago when I really was challenged in a great coaching program with a guy named Dan Martell. It's been awesome, but he really opened my eyes to the difference between marketing and lead gen and then sales. And sales start once the lead is in, and you need to think about lead gen and marketing as its own thing instead of thinking like, okay, salesperson, go out, create your own leads. Because it is really foolish to think like you're asking a lot from somebody to ask them to go out, find deals, basically lead generation, be really good at lead generation, then also be really good at qualifying, and then also be really good at closing the deals and running a sales process. Like that's 3 pretty high level skills wrapped into one person. That's a big ask. And so for whatever reason, it took me forever to get to that point to just realize these need to be separate. And so now where I'm at today is I understand they need to be separate, but I haven't exactly figured out how to crush the lead generation portion. Fortunately, we do get a decent amount of referrals. We do get some inbound through our website, but it's not consistent and predictable yet. So the big thing I'm trying to figure out right now, I do not have an answer for, is how are we going to how are we going to tackle the lead gen problem, and how are we going to try to make that more predictable and consistent?
It's funny when you talk to a company like yours that is not seed funded, right? You have to make decisions in a very different way. And a lot of these companies, and it seems like a lot of the loudest companies are the ones that have a ton of investors, and they have monopoly money where they can go and they can just hire everybody. They can hire anybody to do anything, and so they can build out these gigantic teams and just throw them, and then throw hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars at paid, to and not have a good return, not even make any money on that, lose, but they're just trying to get that baseline. We just got to get enough users, or we need to get XYZ. But whenever you run your business in a cash flow positive way, you've got to make different decisions. And so I think there's a good lesson there of figuring out how to do that. Because what you could do if you had just tons of money, you could split that sales role into 3 different roles. You could have SDRs going out and closing. You could have junior AEs. You can have senior AEs. And so then they take each of those different process where you've got somebody that all they're doing is out there cold calling, right? They are BDRs. They're bringing in the leads. But with your organization, it doesn't make sense. That's 3 people. You're going to hire 3 people to do one function. And so I would love to know. So when you're thinking of now you're growing the marketing team, have you hired some full-time resources? Are you looking to hire resources? Where are you taking those steps into a formal marketing department?
Yeah. So the first investment we made is we got an agency to run our SEO and PPC. And so that's something that we've done and that we're continuing to lean into options there. But the big thing that we did is we brought on a fractional CMO. And so he's helped us kind of get started down that path. And then since then, we've hired an amazing director of digital, a guy named Max Rawls, who's just awesome in so many ways. But so he and Ellie, who we also hired. And so we had an opportunity come up, and now we have Max and we have Ellie on the team. And basically what we're going to do is we're offering digital to our clients now. So we really believe that content first marketing is the right path to go for most brands. And so what good does a digital strategy do if, all it is strategy, and what people actually see is thrown together, it looks like stock imagery, it doesn't captivate in any way. So we really believe a big part of your budget should be going towards the asset creation. And then we should be looking at how do we get these assets in front of the right person instead of vice versa. So they do that for our clients, but the biggest thing we're trying to really do now is say like, hey, Cumberland needs to be like your flagship client. Like we need to be the case study. And so you're going to run our digital, run our socials, create our marketing plan, just like we would for our clients, because we're sick of being the cobbler with no shoes. And also it's a bad look to do great digital for other people. But, if you have a prospect who's thinking about engaging you for social media and digital marketing, and then they come look at your social media and your digital marketing and it sucks, that's not great for conversions, right? And we want to practice what we preach. So that's kind of the route that we're going down now is Max and Ellie are going to be handling our digital strategy and our own marketing. And then we're exploring some different options as far as really highly specified lead generation agencies. So we've met with some agencies who specialize specifically in video production, like cold email, LinkedIn, et cetera.
Yeah. You mentioned the cobbler whose kids have no shoes. That analogy is so true for so many organizations where they don't focus on anything internally, but they're doing, especially like agencies, they are so good at doing stuff for other people. And then you go look at all their stuff and they haven't taken time or invested in it. I don't often respond to cold LinkedIn outreaches, but I had this guy, I think you would find this amusing. This guy reached out to me, an SDR, kind of sent me through an open in-mail and said, what if I told you I could make amazing, engaging content specific to your prospects that would have them just falling over themselves to come work with you? And I could put that in video and we could do it in under X number of weeks. What would you say to that? And of course, generic outreach, which is great. I responded to him and I said, well, that would be great. I would love that. I would love to know. I said, why don't you send me, I'm your prospect. So send me an example of your product that you've tailored for me that's going to make me fall over myself to work with you. I'd love to see that. And he responded to me. He said, he goes, well, thanks for responding to me. That's nice. My marketing team is actually working on that now. And I said, great. I'd love that. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that when it happens. And he was like, okay. And I've never heard from him again. But I think about you guys, and I think about your skills. And it's one thing to see all the things you've done for other people, which is great. But some of it, and it sounds like you're heading down this path, is like, how do you create that for you?
Yes.
How do you do the things that you do for somebody else, for yourself, so that people go, oh, wow, I get them,
100%. Yeah. And I'm getting served up stuff like that all the time, right? So I'm like, if you feed the engine, you don't have to worry about it now. The algorithm's going to do the work for you and put all of your content, as long as it's professional and consistent and relevant, in front of the right people. And if you're making good content and it's getting in front of the right people, they're going to engage. So we have started to make content for ourselves. So I've started my own YouTube channel, trying to document the journey of just building this company and trying to scale it, right? I really believe Gary Vaynerchuk, not everybody's favorite flavor, but he's a super smart guy. And one thing he said a long time ago that really resonated with me, I like Gary, but he said, document, don't create, especially when you're new. Like, document, don't create. And that's exactly what we're trying to do now. So we've launched a podcast that's going to be going live soon, and then starting a YouTube channel. I'm going to start trying to put out a lot of content on the social, so hopefully help both our target prospects and then also other people who are trying to work in this industry and make a living. Like, there's so many lessons we've learned and we've paid a lot of money to learn, that we're just going to try to share that, put that out in the world, and hope it comes back around. So, but I think what we face and what a lot of other agencies face is, it's kind of like, I met this interior designer and I loved her work. And I reached out to her. We had just moved into a new house. And I was like, hey, can you design our living room? And she's like, oh, thank you so much for asking. But like, right now, basically, we only work with whole houses, and there has to be a furniture budget of like $250,000. I was like, well, that's not me. And she's like, I know. She's like, I know, like, I hate being that person to even say it. And I was like, no, it's good for you. Like, I'm not offended by that. I'm super stoked for you. And I remember she made a comment. She's like, I couldn't afford me at this point. And that's the tough thing about, like, when you neglect marketing as you scale, hopefully if you do good work, you will scale to a point where you can't afford yourself. And that's what's tough for us now, is like, most of the clients we work with, they have multi-million-dollar marketing budgets. And that's why they're able to afford really high-end video production as a piece of that, and storytelling as a piece of that. For us, we're nowhere close to that, right? So even knowing we can do it internally for ourselves, there's still costs associated with that. And there's still a level of time and money that goes into it that makes it hard for us to like truly do what we do for others, for ourselves. And so it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. It is. But as you continue to do that, you'll find that more and more people will find their way to you.
Yes.
And you're not going to see the direct. And I think video, especially, you struggle for direct attribution regardless. But the amount of LinkedIn's heading there. YouTube is the top discovery platform for podcasts. Like, video is just where it's all heading. And so being able to have good, compelling, well shot, good sound, good video, like, you're going to go so far ahead, because right now the barrier has gone down a ton.
Yep.
And everybody can afford a microphone, a webcam, and they can, hit record. And it's being flooded with just crappy content. And so you have an opportunity to rise above that with your really well shot, well edited, et cetera. So I think there's a huge opportunity, because you guys already have the know-how, and a lot of companies don't. Sometimes the idea of doing video is just so stressful and so scary. And then you got people in the organization that aren't comfortable with video. Yep. Right? They're like, I don't want to, my face, whatever.
Yeah.
And so you guys are ahead of the curve, But I love the document. Document, don't create. And I think I would love to double click a layer deeper in that, because there's something I think really, really important about that mindset. So I feel like when people go to create something, they're doing it almost for themselves, right? So they're going internal and like, what can I create, produce? And it's just hollow, kind of like, eh. But when you go into the document phase, what you document is important. So if you're documenting a project, you're writing down the key things that are important for that project's success. If you are documenting and putting something out into the world, that is helpful, and people like that. Like, that's what this podcast is.
Yep.
This podcast, yes, it is content. Yes, we are creating it, but I'm documenting your experience and unpacking that so that people can get some nuggets and go, oh, this is how I should think through some of that. So I really love that mindset of document versus create.
You know a lot more about marketing than I do, and probably than a lot of people in the audience might even. Like, I'm curious, what would your tip be to somebody who's just starting, being a high level marketer?
If I was a founder and going out and starting my own company, I would lean heavily on myself and my leaders that are around me. If I got that, I would go out and I would start creating content,
Yes.
sharing everything that we're doing to build the business, the highs, the lows. I mean, we've launched this marketing division of our organization, and that's what I've been doing on my LinkedIn, right? And one of the first things I shared, here's a piece of content that has got the most interaction about that. I told a story of how I lost a deal. I told a story of how a customer came in, they wanted to work. We started walking down this path, and I presented it, and they're like, "Sorry, it's too expensive," or we think we're going to just go hire internally, or "Hey, we're a startup. Hey, it needs to be cheaper." And I just responded to him. I'm like, I appreciate it. I want to work with you. I want the business. I'm trying to grow this thing. But I've been in this enough time to understand, to do what you're asking well, I'm going to need to spend a decent amount of time on it, either me or my team. And if I give it to you at this bargain basement price, we're not going to be able to spend the time that we need. And so what's going to happen is you're going to spend a little and you're going to get a little, and then you're not going to be happy. And so I shared this post of like, I lost a client, and the amount of interaction, one, that I got from that, I had people reach out and say, "Hey, tell me more about what you've started. I'd love to hear that." That was completely free. It was one of those things I wasn't even going to post. I just thought about it when I drove in, and I'm like, man, that kind of sucks. I'll share about it. And so I just typed up this thing. It wasn't even really well wordsmithed or written. It didn't have an image. Most of my posts have images with it. Didn't have an image. It was just an all text post, and put it out there. There is something about, and the last thing I'll say is, there's something about connecting the human. And one of my goals as a marketer is, how quickly can I get you from logo to human? Like, yes, I want you to see our logo. Yes, I want you to hear about this. Yes, I want to cast those nets. But the sooner I can have you connect that with a human person, trust starts to build.
Yes.
And that trust builds before you even have the first conversation. So people are following you on LinkedIn right now, and you are building trust with them, and you're going to get on the phone, or they're going to get on a phone with a sales rep, and there's already going to be trust for your company, even though they've never talked to a sales rep, because they've seen what you've done. They've seen what you put out. They've seen you're consistent, and you're going to close business a lot faster. So that would be the first thing I would do.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's one big thing you and I talked about too, that I don't think anybody can argue with at this point, that personal brand is one of the most powerful brands. Like my business coach talks all the time, and he's put out a lot of content about this, but he's like, you look at any of the big founders versus their companies, like Elon Musk, how many hundreds of millions of followers? Tesla or SpaceX, a fraction, right? And it's the same thing. Like Kim Kardashian, Skims. Look at the difference between the following, like The Rock, his tequila companies, so on and so forth, all the way down to basically any founder that has a personal brand is going to way, way outperform the brand, right? And so I think that's a really good takeaway as well, is to not only be doing this for your brand, but also your personal brand. And, my business coach says all the time too, which was a great point, like you're going to take you with you. Like even if you grow a company and you sell it, now everything you created for that company belongs to somebody else. Like, what are you going to do next? Like, it's never going to hurt you to have a personal brand that has some trust behind it.
So what advice would you give for people that are kind of like in the stage that you were early on to how to think through this and maybe lean in earlier than you did? What would you say?
Yeah, I would say, and I see it all the time in social media. And at one point it's super exciting. At another point I get frustrated because I'm like, why weren't we doing this? But I would say start with creating a bunch of your own content and document everything and put everything out there. And going back to like the document, don't create, like creative projects are great. They're awesome, right? There's movies, novels, there's plenty of things that were created that are awesome, right? So we're not saying creating things is bad, but we're saying when it comes to marketing for most people, to be able to create something that feels authentic and resonates, that's basically fake, it's created, is really, really, really difficult. And we see that even with a lot of our clients, and I'm a big believer that reality is stranger than fiction. And so a lot of people think that their life's just not that interesting or their company's not that interesting. Complete BS. Because we've shot with companies that would sound like the most boring thing ever. And what we have learned making films and making brand anthems for other people is that everybody has a really profound part of their story that they might not even notice. And that's one of the most rewarding things about doing that work, is showing somebody, hey, like, here's your brand anthem, or like, here's a documentary about you. And there's things that they never thought were significant that are super profound and significant. And I can promise you, anybody listening to this, no matter where you're at in life, like, it is the same thing for you. Your life is more interesting than you think. You're more interesting than you think. You're just with you in your life all the time. So you get used to it, right? So yeah, I think that would be my advice, is document everything you're doing, share it, and put just as much emphasis on sharing yourself as you do of anything else in your business. And I think if you do that, and if you focus, like, to put it simply, I think focus a lot on content creation and marketing from day one, and try to scale only by the business that's coming to you versus going out and trying to find the business. Because I really think that there's still amazing salespeople out there, and amazing salespeople always succeed as far as prospecting goes, right? When you think about prospecting versus closing leads that come to you, there'll always be people who can prospect well and go out and find the business, and they'll always do well. But it's a lot harder, and it's a lot harder to find that person to scale a company, right? So it's like, I know I can continue to do that, and I can continue to go out and find a business, but it's going to be really hard for me to find other people that can also do that in a competitive market. Whereas it's really easy to train somebody to close with some, fairly entry-level sales training to teach somebody to close a warm lead. And so I would say put almost all of your time and intention into learning how to create leads, even before you really learn how to close the leads. Like, make lead generation one of your top focuses. And that's something we did not do. We just focused on going out and selling. And if I could go back, I would flip-flop that. If I was starting over, I'd flip-flop that.
This was such a good conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here. I know there's a lot of lessons that people are going to take away from this. And I wish you all the success, and we'll talk soon.
Man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of My Biggest Marketing Mistake. We hope you got a lot of valuable takeaways that you can apply to your business today. And we got a lot more great episodes coming your way, so make sure to like, review, and subscribe to know when the next episode comes out.